So looking at the situation is not just serious. It is kind of structurally shifting of how modern conflict is understood. But to make sense of it properly, you have to strip away from the surface level noise and see what actor is actually doing it, not just what they are saying. Firstly, the IGC's threat to US tech companies is not a random aggression that they are trying to put forth. It is a calculated, I would say, more than that, it is a strategic repositioning of what they are trying to build on. What Iran is attempting here is to blur the line between a civilian and a military infrastructure, specifically by arguing that companies like Apple, Microsoft, and Google are not neutral actors, but they are embedded within the targeting architecture of modern warfare. Now, whether that claim is legally valid under international humanitarian law is highly questionable because the threshold for direct participation in hostilities, according to Rome Statute, is extremely high. But that's not the point. The point is Iran does not need a legal acceptance as for now. It needs strategic ambiguity and where they can play it. By doing this technically, Iran is achieving three main things. Firstly, it deters indirectly by raising the cost for private sector cooperation with the US Israeli systems. It creates the pressure within the US itself because now corporate stakeholders becomes risk sensitive to this whole war. And most importantly, what I feel that it expands the battlefield into the economic and the digital domain where it is relatively less disadvantage. So that is not technically, I would say escalation for the sake of escalation. That's classic way of asymmetric warfare adaptation that Iran is trying to do. Secondly, the Israel ground troop refusal is being misread, especially in American discourse, because this is not Israel avoiding the responsibility. It is the Israel what they are, what I would say, they are prioritizing the theater relevance over here. Their primary threat matrix right now is a deep inside Iran. It is proximate and continuous, particularly in Lebanon and along the northern borders of the Iran. So committing the ground troops into Iran would technically stretch the logistics beyond their operational rationality, and that would make them exposed to deep territorial risk without any strategic necessity at this point of time. And most critically, what they would do is they would weaken their immediate defense posture against the Iranian proxies. So what Israel is trying to do is they are actually consistent with the long-standing doctrine. That means maximum intelligence plus air superiority contribution, minimum ground entanglement where it does not directly serve the national defense. So the comparison people are making politically that the US is left being alone sounds compelling emotionally, but strategically it is flawed, I would say, because the wars are not fought on symbolic burden sharing; they are fought on theater, I would say, specific utility, because. The fact that US is doing this war on the premise that they believe in something and that is why they are doing thing. So the now real core of this whole entire situation, and this is where the analysis is actually is important, is the shift from conventional warfare to systemic disruption. Now Iran knows it cannot win a direct military confrontation with the United States, and that's not even on the table. So instead what they are doing is that they are doing something far more effective. They global flows via the Strait of Hormuz, they are disrupting that, raising insurance and operational risk for global trade. They are targeting the digital and corporate infrastructure narratives. So the Strait of Hormuz technically now is not for them is a choke point. It is more than that. It is a leverage over the entire global economy. So even partial disruption creates a kind of a cascading effect, or I would say ripple effect, that no missile strike can replicate in terms of pressure. So when oil spikes, the shipping technically hesitate to go in that domain, and corporations start recalibrating the whole situation or the risk. And that's not the collateral impact. You see that that is the whole battlefield itself now, which was earlier used to be a collateral impact. And lastly, the US position right now reflects a very clear internal contradiction that they are facing, is that on one hand officials are saying that no ground troops needed, on the other hand troop mobilization remains an open option for them. So that tells you one thing, that this is not a defined end game strategy. It is a controlled flexibility posture that they are trying to put forth. which is fine military, but politically it creates a lot of vulnerabilities between whole system of US, because especially when narratives like America fighting alone began to gain traction domestically. So if you step back and look at the full picture, Iran is not trying to win this war militarily. This is what I sense. It is trying to raise the cost of victory for everyone else, and Israel is not disengaging. It is optimizing the battlefield commitments, and they know that what the battlefield has to be given for the fight, and the US is trying to contain the escalation without losing the deterrence credibility. So it is a very deliberate shift into a multi-domain pressure war, which is economic, technological, and psychological as well, where traditional definitions of combat are being quietly rewritten. And honestly, the most dangerous part is not the strikes and threats, but it's that this new framework, once it has been normalized, does not stay limited to just this conflict, I would say. More than that, I feel the fact that IRGC corporate threats walk through the exact statement why those 18 companies were chosen, and the genuinely noble legal doctrinal argument Iran is making, that tech infrastructure enabling targeting is equal to military target. So technically, explains the three real reasons behind these decisions, that the Lebanon front, Desert Storm precedent, and Iran size. So yeah, I mean, these are the things that is making it more than what we are understanding, because Strait of Hormuz has become the central economic weapon for the broader strategic understanding, because you see that since mid-March, Iran has effectively shut down the traffic through the Strait of Hormuz, which connects the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman. And more recently, Tehran has transformed it into a toll booth, charging some ships as much as $2 million, $2 million per transit. This has caused the unprecedented disruption to global energy flows. Now, the U.S. gas prices exceeded an average of $4 a gallon for the first time since 2022, when Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Now, Brent crude continues to hover above, I guess, $100 per barrel, up from roughly, which is $70 before the conflict began on 28 Feb. So the White House stated very clearly that the United States military is and was prepared to curtail any attacks by Iran, as evidenced by the 90% drop in ballistic missile and drone attacks by the terrorist regime. Secretary of State Marco Rubio stated that we are ahead of schedule on most of them, and we can achieve them without any ground troops. Now, the Pentagon is nonetheless weighing additional deployments of up to 10,000 more forces to give Trump that flexibility if conditions get changed. A former IRGC commander told Iranian state TV that Iran possesses electromagnetic weapons capable of disabling an entire city's power and electronic system without harming the civilians. Now, claiming these haven't been deployed yet due to restraints, which signals threat of future escalation as well. Now, the diplomatic track over here is that Trump has issued mixed messages suggesting that he would end the broadly unpopular war into 2 to 3 weeks, while Secretary of State Rubio stated that finish line is near. Now, Trump has also reportedly suggested that the war could end even if Iran does not reopen the Strait of Hormuz. And on the other hand, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer said 35 countries have signed a statement committing to work together on restoring the maritime security in the strait. And British Foreign Secretary State Yevete Cooper will lead the conference on this issue. So Iran is having suffered the severe decapitation strikes, is shifting towards asymmetric economic warfare, which technically is making them more resilient in this case. If you see, Israeli Channel 12 quoted official source stating that in case of a US ground operation in Iran, Israeli soldiers must not participate on the ground. The report confirmed that if there were an American ground operation, only American troops would be in harm's way. So Israel would technically provide airstrikes, intelligence sharing, and specific special operations support, but they will drew a firm red line, against the ground troop deployment. The reason is very simple, that they have drawn the parallel with respect to the Operation Desert Storm, during which the Israel did not participate in the ground operations in Iraq despite sustaining Scud missile fire. So Blaise Mistel of the Jewish Institute for National Security of America, he noted that in 1991 the US asked the Israel to stay out to avoid the discord with Arab coalition partners. But the rationale now is very different. The presence of Iran-backed group on Israel's border means Israeli forces are needed closer to home to continue defending against the Iranian proxy. Essentially, what they're doing is that Israel is fighting its own ground war in Lebanon. Now, five IDF divisions are currently deployed in southern Lebanon, with preparations underway to deploy a sixth one as well. So, the elite 98th Division of paratroopers and commando units. The Channel 12 also reported that sparked the backlash in the US, especially among the American First and anti war voices, who argued that Washington was being pushed towards a costly ground conflict while Israel refused to commit its own soldier to fighting inside Iran. And feeding this into a wider narrative that American troops were asked to shoulder the risk of war Israel helped drive but not itself fight on the ground. What Israel has contributed, the analysts say the perception that Israel is absent from the fight ignores its role. The Greg Roman of the Middle East Forum noted that if you look at the first 3 days of the war, it was to soften the Iranian territory for the for the eventuality that there might be the need for ground forces to operate, referring to the opening US-Israel strikes that killed the Supreme Leader Khamenei and crippled the Iranian air defenses. So, I mean, all these named companies have operations in or commercial ties to Israel. So, several, including Planter, Microsoft, Google, IBM, and G42, have documented links to Israeli military or defense firms. So, according to Tasmin, and which is an IRGC linked outlet, most locations were selected due to their involvement in developing an AI system for coordinating cloud computing services across the Middle East. And yes, I mean, this is not purely rhetorical. Iran hit two Amazon data centers in the UAE and no and one in the Bahrain during the first week of the war. The US military uses the AWS, which experienced power outages and water damage from firefighters fighting fires caused by the strikes. So, the James Henderson, the CEO of risk management firm Helix, described this as a sustained pattern because tech assets are now created as part of the conflict, not peripheral to it. So, it is also signals that the future crisis may target the data centers and cloud platforms as much as traditional strategic sites. So, these are the few things that needs to be consideration to understand this whole situation, which is going to build a lot of understanding, because Iran has already demonstrated that the will and the capability to follow through. In the first week of the war, Iranian drones struck two Amazon Web Services data centers in the UAE and one in Bahrain, which bottom line says that Iran is making a calculated strategic choice. It cannot win a conventional air war against the US and Israel, so it is redefining the battlefield. They are putting the battlefield into their domain by threatening the Silicon Valley's physically Middle East infrastructure. It exports the economic pain to American shareholders, disrupts the AI and cloud build out in the region. So, this is something which has to be looked with much more precision, because IRGC also told civilians living near these company offices in the region to evacuate within a 1 kilometer radius. A tactic which is designed to amplify fear and press workers to abandon their post without firing a single shot. And every company on the list has one or more three contradictions. So let's see how it goes, because this is very, very, very different from what we have assumed the battlefields and the changing times.